one day it clicked in my brain as I started doing these burnout events called Cleetus and Cars. I was like, man, if you think about it, it's just a little stadium. If it had a burnout pad in the middle, it'd be a little burnout stadium.
Garrett Mitchell is known to millions as Cleetus McFarland. The loud laugh, the mullet, the endless burnouts. The man who turned horsepower into a lifestyle brand. To the internet, he represents freedom. Fast cars, no rules, no limits. A guy living the dream while cameras roll and engines scream. But behind that image exists a much quieter story. One built on pressure, fear, financial risk, and moments that nearly destroyed everything he worked for. This isn't the version fans see in highlight reels. This is the version that almost broke him. At the height of his popularity, Garrett Mitchell made a decision that would define his life far beyond YouTube views. He invested nearly $1 million into a decaying, abandoned racetrack, a move that looked bold, visionary, even heroic. But behind the scenes, it was a gamble so dangerous that one wrong turn could have ended his career, his finances, and his future. "I had to turn off the comments," Mitchell once said quietly. "I can't let people say things that aren't true about Parker." That moment was small, almost forgettable, but it revealed cracks in the armor. Because when someone who built a career on public attention starts shutting the public out, something is wrong. And that was only the beginning. Garrett's story starts long before the cameras, before the merchandise, before the roar of crowds chanting his name. He was born Lawrence Garrett Mitchell in Nebraska, far from the spotlight. His childhood wasn't shaped by fame, but by curiosity. Engines fascinated him. Machines made sense. He learned early that if something was broken, it could be rebuilt, if you were willing to put in the work. That mindset followed him into adulthood. Before Cleetus McFarland existed, Garrett worked in marketing and media. He understood how attention worked. He knew how stories spread. And when he created the Cleetus McFarland persona, it wasn't an accident. It was strategy mixed with passion. The exaggerated Southern accent, the humor, the chaos, it all worked. The channel exploded. Burnouts became events. Events became brands. Brands became businesses. From the outside, Garrett looked unstoppable. But success has a way of encouraging risk, especially when momentum feels permanent. By early 2020, Garrett was riding higher than ever. Millions of subscribers, massive reach, merchandise flying off shelves. And then he saw something most people would have ignored completely. An abandoned racetrack in Bradenton, Florida. It was forgotten, overgrown, rusted, a relic from another era of motorsports. The asphalt was cracked, the grandstands empty. Nature had begun reclaiming it inch by inch. But Garrett didn't see decay. He saw possibility. He believed this track could become something no other YouTuber had. A private motorsports playground. A place to film without restrictions. A venue for massive events. A physical home for his brand. He called it the Freedom Factory. Standing in the fog during one of his first visits, Garrett spoke with excitement that masked the danger ahead. "What's going on, guys? We're out here at the Freedom Factory," he said. "It's beautiful, even if you can't see much yet." What he didn't say was the price, $850,000. And that was just the beginning. This wasn't a casual investment. Garrett didn't have a corporation quietly absorbing the cost. He didn't have a media conglomerate backing him. To make this deal happen, he had to liquidate his life. Savings were drained, assets sold, credit lines stretched to their limit. Every dollar he had, and many he didn't, went into that track. There was no backup plan. Because Garrett believed the Freedom Factory wouldn't just pay for itself, it would change everything. But timing is everything, and his timing couldn't have been worse. Almost immediately after the paperwork was finalized, the world shut down. The global pandemic hit like a brick wall. Public gatherings became illegal. Events were canceled overnight. Crowds disappeared. Travel stopped. The exact things Garrett needed to survive financially were suddenly impossible. The stands stayed empty. The gates stayed closed. The revenue projections he had carefully imagined vanished in days. Behind the scenes, panic set in. Crew members later described scenes that fans never saw. Garrett, working alone at the track, sleeping on site, pulling weeds by hand, hammering boards, fixing what he could with what little money remained. During the day, he rebuilt the track physically. At night, he edited videos, chasing algorithms, chasing hope. The smile never left the screen, but off camera, the pressure was relentless. Bills didn't stop, loans didn't pause, and the IRS doesn't care about dreams. As the months passed, the financial strain intensified. Every upload had to perform. Every event had to succeed. One failure could tip everything over. Then came the moment that changed the tone forever. During one of the Freedom Factory events, a devastating accident occurred. A fan was seriously injured, permanently scarred. The joy, the noise, the adrenaline vanished instantly. What followed wasn't just emotional fallout, it was legal scrutiny. Questions were asked. Investigations began. Federal agencies started paying attention. And suddenly, Garrett wasn't just fighting debt, he was fighting for survival. The American dream was unraveling, and no one was prepared for what came next. As pressure mounted, the public saw only fragments of the truth. YouTube thumbnails stayed loud, titles stayed upbeat, but behind the scenes, Garrett Mitchell was navigating the most dangerous period of his life. The accident cast a long shadow over the Freedom Factory. Safety protocols were questioned. Liability loomed. And with federal oversight entering the picture, everything Garrett had built felt fragile. For the first time, the Freedom Factory wasn't a symbol of freedom. It was a liability. Garrett addressed the situation carefully. Emotions were high. Rumors spread fast. Online speculation spiraled out of control. At one point, the noise became so overwhelming that he shut it down completely. "I turned off the comments," he said. "I can't let people say things that aren't true." That wasn't the voice of a carefree YouTuber. That was someone under siege. Behind closed doors, decisions had to be made quickly. Safety upgrades, operational changes, financial restructuring. Every move cost money, money that was already stretched thin. The IRS scrutiny didn't help. When income spikes and spending explodes, attention follows. Paperwork matters. Timelines matter. And mistakes, even unintentional ones, can have massive consequences. For Garrett, the stress was constant. Friends noticed the exhaustion, the weight loss, the lack of rest. But quitting wasn't an option. Walking away would mean losing everything: the track, the brand, the dream. So he pushed forward. Slowly, painfully, the Freedom Factory began to stabilize. Events returned. Crowds came back. Safety improved. The chaos didn't disappear, but it became controlled. And through it all, Garrett adapted. The heartbreak of this story isn't that he failed. It's that he came dangerously close. Few creators risk everything they own on a single idea. Fewer still survive when that idea nearly collapses under global circumstances no one could predict. Today, the Freedom Factory stands not just as a racetrack, but as a warning, a reminder that behind every viral success story is a person carrying weight most fans will never see. That fame doesn't shield you from fear, that dreams don't come with guarantees. Garrett Mitchell didn't just build a racetrack. He walked straight into the edge of ruin and somehow found his way back. But the cost was real, and the scars remain. By the time the public saw stability returning to the Freedom Factory, the worst damage had already been done, just not where anyone could see it. Surviving the crisis didn't mean escaping it unscathed. For Garrett Mitchell, the pressure never truly lifted. It only changed shape. Behind the scenes, the constant risk rewired how he approached everything. Every event was no longer just content, it was a liability calculation. Every upload wasn't just entertainment, it was a financial necessity. The carefree image that built Cleetus McFarland had to coexist with a man now forced to think like an executive, a risk manager, and a crisis controller. The fun was still there, but it was heavier. Friends and longtime collaborators noticed the difference. The jokes landed a little quieter. The laughs ended faster. Garrett was present, but guarded. Always thinking 2 steps ahead, always watching for the next thing that could go wrong. Because once you come close to losing everything, you never fully relax again. The Freedom Factory became operational, but at a cost far greater than money. Garrett had learned, firsthand, how thin the line is between success and collapse. How quickly public love can turn into public judgment. How unforgiving systems can be when passion outpaces preparation. And perhaps most painfully, how isolated leadership can be. When things were going wrong, the responsibility didn't belong to the audience. It didn't belong to the crew. It didn't belong to the internet. It belonged to him. Every decision, every signature, every risk. There were nights when Garrett stayed awake, replaying moments over and over, wondering what could have been done differently. Whether buying the track was genius or insanity. Whether trusting momentum instead of caution had nearly destroyed him. But regret didn't pay bills, so he kept moving. Over time, the narrative shifted. The Freedom Factory stopped being the risky purchase and started becoming a legitimate motorsports venue. Events became better organized. Safety standards tightened. Oversight increased. Slowly, credibility replaced chaos. From the outside, it looked like a comeback. But inside, Garrett carried the memory of how fast it almost ended. The accident, the investigations, the financial strain, the nights spent alone on the infield, wondering if the next phone call would be the one that shut it all down. Those moments don't disappear just because success returns. They stay, and they change you. The heartbreaking part of Garrett Mitchell's story isn't failure. It's what survival demanded from him. It demanded comfort, peace of mind, simplicity. It demanded that the dream grow teeth. What once felt like freedom now required structure, rules, and relentless responsibility. The irony is impossible to ignore. A place called the Freedom Factory nearly trapped its creator. Yet, in a strange way, it also proved something rare. that behind the exaggerated persona, the jokes, and the burnouts, there was resilience, a willingness to absorb pain silently and keep moving forward. A creator who didn't run when the fantasy cracked, but stayed and rebuilt it piece by piece. Garrett Mitchell didn't just save a racetrack. He saved himself from becoming another cautionary tale. But the cost was real, and the lesson permanent, because fame doesn't make risk disappear. Money doesn't guarantee safety, and dreams, no matter how loud or exciting, can turn dangerous when everything is on the line. The Freedom Factory still roars today. But if you listen closely, beneath the engines and applause, you can hear the echo of a moment when it almost went silent forever.